So we need to, some of you are almost ready to start soldering this thing. So this is our little board that we're going to put all these messes of wires into. And I want to talk about how this works. So if you notice here, we've got a row here that are labeled blue negative, right? And a row here of red positive. And that's repeated over here, but inverted. So the positive is on the outside over here, negative is over here, okay? And then we've got, 1, 2, 3, 1 through 15, A through J. Well, let's flip this thing over and see what's actually going on. Well, if you look, you will see that these holes are actually connected to each other. So each of these two long rows on this side are wired together. And you can see that there's a little copper in between those holes, okay? Which means any wire that you put in this hole will automatically connect to a wire you put in this hole, or any hole along that row. Like, they will be connected together, okay? And then the other thing you'll notice is each of these little 5-hole columns are wired together, but these are the A, yes, well, this will be the numbered columns. They are divided along the center. So this row is all connected, and this row is all connected, but there is an electrical gap between them, okay? Do you understand that? Anybody got any questions about that? That's super important for what we're about to do. So what's going to happen here is, if we flip this over now and look at it, we can talk through how our checker is going to work. So we're going to have a battery, okay? And we are going to connect the positive side of the battery to this red positive rail here, okay? And we'll connect the negative side of the battery to this negative rail over here. Now then what's going to happen is we're going to insert our 5 switches between the positive rail and one of these numbered rows here. The idea being, when you push the switch, it's going to send that positive voltage, boom, into this row when you push that switch. So suddenly that positive voltage is going to be over here on all 5 of those, or any one of these. So if the switch was wired across here and number 1, so when you push the switch, that completes that part of the circuit, and we've basically shorted these 2 pins together. All right? So now the voltage is there. Well, then what happens to it? Well, what we want is all of our connectors, so all of the ones that are the same color, so like if you were using, like I'm using orange for my first set of pins, so if all my orange ones were along here, then all that voltage would also go through into those orange connectors, right, on that pin. Well, the same thing is then going to happen over here. So the negative side of the battery is here, and we're going to now put our LEDs across this negative rail and one of these columns. Okay? So that if the electricity ever makes it across the board into these little columns and runs through, it goes through the LED down to the negative battery, and the LED will light up. So what's the thing that goes between the 2 sides of the board? Anybody? The cable, right? So we're going to plug our cable between these 2 things, and that completes the circuit. So now we've got a full circuit all the way across, and once we push that button, then the voltage goes up, goes through that rail, out the connector, through the cable, back on the other connector, into this rail, through the LED, into the negative, and close to the battery. LED lights up, cable works. Everybody with me? Does that make sense? Okay, so what do we got to do? Well, there's a couple things we got to do to prep our board here. And you'll notice I've kind of gotten started. If you count the number of, like if I just went into my box here and counted the number, so all the connectors on this side will be on one side of the board, and all the connectors on this side will be the other side of the board, okay? So if I just count all my oranges, including the switch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 orange wires. Well, on my board here, you only get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes per row, right? I got 7 wires. Plus I got to do the jump. So I need to short 2 of these together. You see, that's what I've done here. So I've just soldered a wire between 14 and 15 and between 10 and 11 over here. And I've done it between 14 and 15 on this side. And now I'll do 10 and 11 on this side. That way, I'm just making these 2 rows the same thing electrically. That way I can wire my extra wires into either side and they're all connected together. So I'm just creating a longer column for myself. So let me show you how that's done. What I'm going to do is I get myself a little bit of wire. Which I have already got somewhere. There it is. Okay. So I've just got this little piece of wire. I've stripped it on either side and tinned it. Okay. Now what's going to happen is you're going to swap, when you get to this step, you're going to swap out your soldering iron tip for a finer tip. Okay, so I have smaller tips because we got to do much finer detail work here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to line it up with the hole that I want, which is that hole. And I'm going to try to just kind of torque that a little bit so it doesn't fall out. And then I'm going to get some thinner solder. So this solder wire is a little bit thinner because I don't need anywhere near as much solder to put this in here. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to touch my soldering tip to the board and the wire, heat that up, and then feed a little bit of solder into there until it drops on the hole. See? Oh, it dropped. See that? See the solder flow right in there? That's a good solder joint. Okay? Now I'm going to take a look here at this. And yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and stick the other side in right next to it. Yep, that'll work. And we'll stick that down here. Now I'll solder this side. Very important that you heat up the hole and the wire with the soldering iron. Get both of them hot so when you melt the solder in there, both fuse to that solder, okay? All right. Let's see how I did. Oh yeah. So now I get my flush cutters and I can just cut these off right before that solder pools. There you go. So now those are stuck together electrically. Everybody understand that? Understand what I just did? Okay. So now let's look at my box. So here's my box. Here's my board. Now the board is going to end up laying like this. Okay. And I got to figure out where the battery's going to go. So my options are here or here. Now if I put it here, I'm kind of pushing up against my 1/8 inch connector. So I'm going to have my battery be over here. The reason this is important because this is going to tell me which direction my board's going to lay. So I'm going to have my board this way, which means I'm going to put the battery on this side. Okay? So I'm going to put this in there. So the positive is pointing away towards me. All right? So I'm going to get my battery clip. Okay, so here's my 9-volt battery clip. Now, what I'm going to do, first thing I'm going to do is cut off this little connector. We don't need it. Okay? And then we're just going to separate out these two wires. Now, the red is the positive and the black is the negative. So I'm going to go ahead and strip these and get them ready to go. Then go ahead and tin this. Back to me. Other side. Now it's going to be really important that you avoid the globbies on these pinned wires that you're going to do for this board, because otherwise they won't fit through the hole, right? You've got big solder globs in there. See how I ended up with a little glob right there? I'm going to like cut that out. Otherwise it won't go through the hole. Okay, so my positive is going to go here. That's the positive side of the battery, and that's the positive row. And if we forgot that, let's just double check. So, see? Positive, positive. Okay, so I'm going to put that there. Put that in there, and I'm just going to like put that there so it'll stay in place. And we'll solder this in. Okay. And then we'll do the negative, which will be here. Yep, looks good. So now I'll put those off. All right, so this is ready to go. So I've got my positive battery terminal is right there, and that's going to light up that whole row now with the positive voltage of the battery, right? And then this negative's over here, and that's where it'll go to the other side. So I'm ready now to start putting stuff in. And how am I going to do that? Well, so here's my box. And what we want is the side that has the XLR pins connector, okay, this one. That's the side that goes with the switch. Okay? So I'm going to line up my clamps here in my clamp. Let me open my clamp up really wide. Oops. Where it fits. So I'm gonna clamp my box just kind of on the corner here, so that it'll grab onto it. And then I'm going to drop it down to where I can see what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm going to start collecting all the orange wires on this side, which has the pins connector. So I'm going to get the one from the switch, the one from the XLR, the one from the NL4. Let's see. This is the one from the 1/4 inch. And all of these I got to get together here on the board. Okay. And let's see. There's the RCA. And looks like here is the 1/8 inch. All right, there they are. There's all my orange wires for the first side. So I found them all. They're probably going to get lost from me again, but I'm going to try to set them aside here. And I'm going to put all those orange wires in over here on these 8 holes. So that's the positive battery. And so I'm going to jump my switch into there in a minute, but I'm going to put all those orange wires there. Okay? So, get the first one here. And if you want, you can feed a few in at a time. If that helps you. I'm going to actually start in the second row. You'll see I got some globbies on this one, so I wasn't going in. There. No, it doesn't want to stay, does it? You really want the jacket to touch the board. You don't want any exposed wire on that other side. Okay, so I'm trying to make sure that I can get those jackets to stay. If I need to do a little bend, I will. All right, I'll do those two. Magnifier throws off my depth perception. All right, how'd I do? Yeah, it's all right. Go ahead and cut those. So I would keep going, and I would do all my orange ones there, and then I would go and do in my case, the blue ones would go in, these two. And then I'd skip at one, and I would do all of my green ones. Now I should be able to fit them all in one row, because I don't have as many of those. All my green ones would go there, and then I'd skip aside, and then my 2 yellow ones would go here. Okay? And then I would repeat that process again on the other side of the board for the other side of the cable checker. So all the connectors on this side now would be soldered to this side of the board. So all my orange ones from this side would go here, and then all of my blue ones from that side would go here, and then my green ones would go there, and my yellow ones would go there. Okay? Is that making sense? Yes.
You have to make sure that both sides are matched up with each other.
Yeah, if you get the sides mixed up, you're going to get very confusing results when you use your cable checker. Okay, so make sure when you're bringing all your orange wires, for example, for this side, make sure they're all the wires coming from this side of connectors. All right, and then the orange wires from this side need to be on this part. So make sure you keep those separated because you want the cable to go between them, right? If you got them mixed up, then what could happen is if you ever tried to test an adapter that went from one type of the connectors to the other, it might not work because it might not be straddling both sides of the board, and then it wouldn't complete the circuit. Okay, so that's why you got to keep an eye on it. Then what's going to happen is all of my red wires from the switches are going to go into my positive row from the battery. And all of my white wires from the back side of the LEDs are going to go into my negative row of the battery. And then I'm done. Questions?
Wait, so the orange wire that's coming from the red button, or at least yours, I'm doing the same color scheme. So
Okay.
the orange wire coming from the red button, it's not going to be included in the group, or
It is. Yeah. So the orange wire for the switches or the buttons goes with the side of connectors that includes the XLR pins. Yeah?
the LEDs.
No, the LEDs are going on the other side. Right? So the LEDs will go over with this side of connectors, right? And then, yeah, the red wires from the switches go on the positive rail, and the white wires from the LEDs go on the negative rail, and then you've got a complete cable checker. Okay? Other questions? So I'm going to be soldering wires today, so you can watch me do it, or keep working, or whatever, but if you have questions, you want me to look at something, I'm happy to help you. If you're trying to mount connectors, I can help you with that. I don't mind stopping, but absent questions, I'm just going to be soldering this entire mess of wires onto this board. Okay? Yes? Yes. All right.